Welcome back to Focus Today. I'm Steve Johnson, and I don't know if you know this, but here is a fact. You've heard of the persecuted church. How about this? 100 Christians killed each month for their faith. According to Open Doors, they published their World Watch List ranking of those countries that have the most persecution to those who have, well, let's just say less than absolute persecution. Topping the list is North Korea, followed by Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia. The list goes down. There's about 50 that they target specifically, saying these are areas of the world to watch out for. And you can check it out on their website. With us right now is Emily Fuentes. She's a public relations and communication coordinator for Open Doors. Nice to have you with us, given these unfortunate circumstances, really, of what we're talking about, but it's something you face every day, the persecution of the church. And what I'd like to do is ask you, first of all, when we talk about the church being persecuted, how do you define what that is?
Well, thank you so much for having us to be able to share this important message. We define persecution in many different realms, and it can expand to being very harsh, as in death penalties for your faith, or even labor camps in North Korea, to sometimes just being ostracized by society, or societal persecution. Sometimes it's family persecution. Oftentimes people who come from a Muslim background in the Middle East and African regions face persecution from their families as well. So persecution comes in many different forms and many different extremes as well.
I suppose it doesn't help too much to have an American like Dennis Rodman come to North Korea and tell the leader there that he's really a cool guy and an amazing leader at this point. I mean, you're looking at that, and I imagine your jaws open up when you see this kind of thing happen. I mean, the ugly American has raised his face with total ignorance, it looks like.
It's unfortunate. It really is. I mean, it's Dennis Rodman, so, you take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. But it's unfortunate whenever a regime like that is given any form of praise, just because realities are not only for persecuted Christians, but just from a human rights perspective, it's the worst place on earth to live, and Christians receive it even more so than other groups too.
Now, I noticed China is not on this list. Why is that?
China actually is. It's a little lower in the 30s.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, it's
oh, yeah, 37.
Fallen.
You're right. I see it there.
Yeah, it's actually fallen this year from previous years, because in some regions the persecution has decreased. Someone once said a statement about China, which I always like to share: anything you hear about China is true. So people say, oh, I hear there's less persecution in China. People can deliver Bibles. And that's true in the cities like Beijing and Shanghai. But some of the more rural areas, and especially the northwestern parts, the Uyghur section of China, you'll find more local government persecution. So Christians aren't allowed to meet together in house churches, or maybe they face more persecution in the Uyghur section because of the Muslim-dominated area there.
Well, okay, with this in mind, do you find that a lot of Christians are kind of unaware of this whole persecution aspect? Or is there a cognizance that, yeah, there's persecution, but I really have no perspective of how to put it into play, really, in my life?
Sure, I think it varies. I think one of the things we find, too, is that maybe trials people face in the West are sometimes labeled as persecution, where in reality it's nothing compared to what persecution actually is. Trials and persecution are two very different things. And so I don't think a lot of people always realize that, like in Nigeria, for example, every month last year, at least one church was bombed, one church service. This is true persecution, that these believers are choosing to attend church and are being attacked because of their faith. And so I don't think a lot of people know the reality of it. And our goal is not only to help these persecuted Christians, but to get the message out there as well, so more people know about these persecuted Christians' plight, and also will be praying for them.
Now, I notice on your listing, Nigeria is number 13, which is in the severe persecution, which, again, really of the 5 levels you have, any of them are bad, but I notice the first one is absolute persecution, North Korea standing alone in that. Then the next category is extreme persecution, then severe at number 3, moderate, and then sparse. Talk about the trends you're seeing. China, you said, has actually shown itself possibly to improve in some areas. Are things getting better or worse in the world when it comes to persecuting Christians?
Unfortunately, China is one of the rare examples we have of positive change. There's not much positive change in the world. We would say another exception of positive change would be Pakistan. Not that it's gotten a lot better, but some of these blasphemy laws, the case of Rimsha having her charges lifted against her, that was the teenage girl who had the blasphemy charges against her last year. Those were lifted, and we've seen a few cases follow the same path, which has been an encouragement. However, it is extremely difficult to be a Christian in Pakistan still. However, all the other countries, it's usually either remaining the same or we're seeing worse persecution. Some of the countries have even dropped on our list, and it's not because they've gotten better. It's just because other countries have gotten worse.
Wow, really? Is there a commonality? I mean, as we look to the globe, I'm seeing somewhat of a geographical regioning of some of these countries. What are you noticing when you look at persecution around the globe geographically?
Yeah, I think if you look at the map we offer with the World Watch List, you'll see that in the 1040 window especially, there's a lot of persecution, and a lot of persecution does come from Muslim-dominated societies, from Muslim extremists especially. That's the persecution that you're facing in Nigeria, and then some of those governments which have implemented Sharia law, which is the extreme form of Islam law. And so the Maldives, Saudi Arabia, all those kind of countries where that's part of their government, it really affects Christians because they're not only facing it from society and family, they're also facing it from their government as well.
Now, you had mentioned that overall it appears things have not gotten better but gotten worse. How long has that trend been going on? Is that a steady trend or is that a recent one?
Yeah, we've had the World Watch List going on for over 11 years now, and we've been monitoring it. And I'd say in those 11 years, you just kind of see persecution increasing in many areas. However, there's been areas, where persecution's gotten much better. An example would be our ministry started in 1955 with our founder smuggling Bibles into Eastern Europe. While persecution in many of those countries that were the former USSR, it's not quite the same as it once was. Some of the Central Asian countries still deal with persecution, but we've seen miracles at the same time too.
Really? Can you talk a little bit about that? What are the encouraging notes that you've seen in some areas?
Sure, yeah. So one of my favorite stories about Open Doors is in 1982, Open Doors launched a 7-year prayer campaign for the Berlin Wall to come down because they knew that if the Berlin Wall came down, it would signify that communism had ended in many of those countries in the Eastern Europe. And in 1989, we all know what happened in November of 1989 is that the wall came down. It was just an amazing answer to many people's prayers for over 7 years of faithful praying. God did bring it down exactly that year. And so it was great because many of those countries that were, Poland and Albania, some countries that don't even exist anymore, were not facing persecution like they once had. Churches were reopening, and it was wonderful. Like I said, there's still some Central Asian countries where persecution is still very dominant, like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, but a lot of the other Eastern European countries, persecution's not what it was.
Now, if people go to your website, they can kind of get an update on where they need to be praying, and perhaps if they can act in some way. They have the options for that too?
Exactly. I'd encourage people to go to our website and take the 555 challenge. And this is praying throughout the entire year for all the 50 countries on our World Watch List. We focus on one country a week and just ask people to commit at least 5 minutes of prayer for that country, kind of give them facts and information and the #1 prayer request for each country.
Well, that's good. And this weekend is Pray for the Persecuted Christians around the globe, really. So a lot of people will be doing that. Appreciate that. Emily Fuentes with Open Doors USA, Public Relations and Communication Coordinator. That's great to know about that website and everything. Thanks for giving us an update on that.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. I very much appreciate it.
You bet. Well, keep us up to date with what we need to know about it. And that'll do it for Focus today. Thanks for joining us, and join us again next time.